Ragy, I'd love to go deeper on these three key identifiers of a mass shooter. First, though, just to give people context, what do we need to know about your background to understand what you bring to this field of understanding the mind of a mass shooter?
Sure, absolutely. I'm a psychiatrist, so I'm a physician who's focused on psychiatric illness. I've been doing this for about 20 years. I'm a full-time researcher at Columbia University. My main area is basically developing new medications for people with schizophrenia using brain imaging and clinical trials. I, about 5 to 10 years ago, began to focus on violence and using brain imaging and clinical trials within violence, uh, within the field of schizophrenia, in particular, people with schizophrenia who are violent. And then about 6 or 7 years ago, after hearing about all these mass shootings and everything that was going on, and seeing that a lot of people in the media and otherwise were kind of blaming mass shootings primarily on people with psychiatric illnesses. And when we mean psychiatric illnesses in the context of mass shootings, we're primarily talking about people with psychotic disorders. My colleagues and I really wanted to, as definitively as possible for ourselves, determine what the relationship between mental illness and psychotic illness in particular and mass shootings is. So we put together the Columbia Mass Murder Database. This is the largest database of all types of mass murder in the world by far. We collected data on all mass murders around the world from 1900 until today, including, again, mass murderers who use firearms or mass shooters. We use the word mass murderers who use firearms rather than mass shooters all the time because about 20% of mass shooters actually use other weapons. So, for example, one mass shooting with which people are very familiar is the 1966 Texas at Austin, I think it was like the Bell Tower mass shooting. That's kind of like the one that people say like started the epidemic. We've actually had mass shootings forever, but that's kind of the one that people refer to as starting the epidemic. That person actually used another method before he even started using his firearms. In that case, I believe he smothered a family member in their home before he went to the campus and started shooting people. So either way, about 20% of mass shooters actually use other weapons in addition to the firearms. So either way, we examined all types of mass murders, including mass murders who didn't use firearms at all, because we thought that would be the most appropriate way to examine causes of and motivations of and associations with mass shootings. Because, what one wants to, whenever one does research, one wants to avoid bias or effects that one might see but are not related to the actual effects we want to examine. One wants to use a comparison group that is as closely related to the group to limit those biases, so that we want to understand mass shooters. So what group is most related to mass shooting without that one variable that we're examining? Because you have to kind of isolate that one variable. In our case, that variable is firearms. So we thought that the most appropriate comparison group would be mass murderers who use other weapons. So that way we focus on firearms. Why do people use firearms to perpetrate mass murder as opposed to other weapons? So that's the background. We have now about 2,300 mass murders, cases of mass murder in our database. I created this database with Dr. Gary Ricardo, who is really an expert in this sort of thing. And we have about 50 different variables for all of these people. And it's from that we we publish on the database and on this information, and we understand what we now understand about mass shootings.
To go even deeper on these ideas, you can watch my full episode using the link in the description or the box on the screen.